Jake Lloyd, yes him. His performance as the 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace is massively underrated, and it's time to reappraise it. There, I said it. Sue me, internet. Whether you agree or not, hear me out till the end on this. You'll also hear from a filmmaker who claims that even the editing decisions hindered the young actor's performance. He'll even provide examples. The case for Jake Lloyd's reappraisal starts now. Jake Lloyd was criticised and bullied for his role in the film to the point where he retired from acting in 2001, 2 years after the movie's release, and later cited intense bullying as the reason.
High school they wouldn't let it go. College has been similar.
I'm obviously not in a position to say that what followed was directly caused by the backlash, but Lloyd's life has since continued to be a struggle. His future Darth successor, Hayden Christensen, also received his fair share of Star Wars critics, which less dramatically drove him to farming as opposed to driving dangerously, but Hayden's performance has since quite widely been reappraised by the fanbase, and I'm happy for him. I'm looking forward to seeing him back in Kenobi. But now I think it's Jake's turn to be reappraised. I personally massively underrated his performance, and I think a lot of people still do, unfairly. It took me a long time to see past the film's surface level flaws and find the respect I have for it today, which I talk more about in another video, link in description. But let's focus on Jake Lloyd. His performance didn't reduce me to let's bully a child level of anger, but I far from loved it. But now I really do think that Lloyd did a fantastic job, especially considering his age and what he was given to work with. One common complaint that's not directed at Lloyd is that some fans didn't want to see such a young, innocent future Darth Vader. But because he was the Anakin not everybody wanted to see doesn't make his performance bad. This isn't our story or vision, it's George Lucas's, and he was setting this character up for the mother of all falls, and it had to start from the opposite extreme to have the desired impact. With that in mind, it wouldn't have made sense for Lloyd to have lent into the character's dark side right away. Lucas wanted us to meet a 9-year-old starry-eyed Anakin Skywalker, much like Luke in A New Hope, albeit much younger. And hey, Jake Lloyd gave us that bright-eyed performance. It was wholesome, and it needed to be to give Anakin a place to fall from. I can see now that what we were given was an actually quite beautiful foreshadowing of this tragedy for the franchise's most iconic character, which is ultimately what the prequels were about. Was it perfect? No. Maybe perfection wasn't ever achievable anyway, but Jake or any other child actor was not exactly given the best starting point to work from. It's no secret that even adult actors have struggled with George Lucas's sometimes clunky dialogue. And also there's Lucas's directing style. When it comes to working with actors, he has been known to be sometimes a bit hands-off.
Action.
As Mark Hamill once summed up, "My voice not his. I would talk to George about, say, Luke and what he is feeling. Should I be jealous that this guy is hitting on the princess?" George would say, "That's interesting. We'll talk about it later." Which, of course, we never would. Just a gentle reminder that Jake Lloyd was 8 years old at the time of filming. It's also true that the edit can make or break a film, and even an actor's performance. During the process of his own prequel's re-edit, filmmaker and Star Wars fan Simon Drake found that some of the post-production decisions might well have hampered Lloyd.
As a fun lockdown project, I decided to edit the 3 prequel films into one long Anakin origin story. In the process of doing that, I noticed some interesting things about Jake Lloyd's portrayal of Anakin. Whilst Jake wasn't the strongest child actor in history, but I do also think it shows that their choice of editing and dialogue and possibly lack of direction hasn't helped Jake's performance to translate him being a bit of a loner orphan slave, whereas I think actually some of the editing choices go against that and make him almost too happy, too disinterested in the dangers of the world around him, which may have contributed to a lot of the criticism that he did have. If you think about a lot of the classic scenes in the original trilogy, Luke looking at the binary sunset, burning Darth Vader, even the trench run, there's very little actual dialogue. It's all about looks and experiences. Something I noticed with Jake Lloyd is he wasn't really allowed any of those chances for his character to actually breathe. He was just constantly talking, constantly saying expositional, quite clunky dialogue.
This is tense!
For example, the Naboo spaceship sequence, his character is just on autopilot, both literally and figuratively, and he's constantly saying things, he's constantly yipping, or he's accidentally blowing things up, which you could argue is the Force, as opposed to being in the driving seat like Luke in the original trilogy. What I tried to do is pull out a lot of the extraneous dialogue, but also take away some of the aspects of the ship itself being an automatic pilot. I think that helps to improve his character and having a growth and having a character arc, because he's learned how to fly a ship from Rick Oley on the way to Coruscant, and it's showing him actually involved in the battle more directly, as opposed to doing it accidentally, doing it by coincidence. When I listened to the audio commentary of The Phantom Menace, George Lucas was saying that they would often do 10-minute takes of the whole sequence without really breaking, and then edited it down into sequences. Whereas when they talk about editing the original trilogy, they actually went against that, and they actually edited to create the flow of the dialogue as opposed to being dictated by the flow of the actors. Just on record, no disrespect for Oscar-winning sound designer Ben Burr and George Lucas. I'm certainly not saying I'm an expert over them. I just did my prequel edit as a fun project, and it did actually give me more of an appreciation of the prequel films, as opposed to going, I'm just going to cut out all the rubbish bits.
Thank you, Simon. So maybe what we ended up seeing from Jake Lloyd wasn't as good as it actually was. Look, again, I'm not saying it was the greatest performance, but there was a lot of good in it, and a lot out of his control. Also, when you take into account that the film was marketed towards children of 1999, I think the performance fitted into that time pretty well. No matter whether your opinion has changed or not, the bottom line is that the backlash was simply cruel. Jake Lloyd, like Ahmed Best and Hayden Christensen, was given a brief. The brief was the vision of one George Lucas, and because an entire generation of fans had built this story up in their own minds, nothing Lucas gave them could ever match it. Jake Lloyd delivered on that George Lucas brief, not yours. It's time to reappraise. While you're here, you might like this video.